me? Okay, we're good now, I think.
Froze, yes, maybe no.
Yeah, no, we're good.
Oh, that's good. Hopefully they're not running their servers through like Fort McMurray. That's a very bad situation.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, so...
Okay, we're live.
Ready to start? All right. Well, hello and welcome to another Franchise Hockey Manager 2 stream. My name is Adam. I am the community manager of Franchise Hockey. With me, as always, is Jeff, our producer, who is pictured right now, and you can see.
Hey, everybody.
We are currently at July 15th of 1980. We just did our first draft that we have and have rebuilt the Winnipeg Jets roster from completely and utterly awful into something mediocre.
That's a good way of putting it. Just scrolling down to the draft picks we made, you can see we got a pretty good start towards the rebuild with Paul Coffey and Dave Bavich. We had 2 first-round picks. We had traded for a late one in addition to our own number 2 overall. So we got pretty solid beginnings of a new group of defensemen and picked up some good forwards as well. This was the 1980 draft, which was really loaded, so it was a good time to invest in draft picks and bring in a few new guys. And where we are right now is just going through the roster in the off season. We've got a couple of months till the start of the season. This being the early 80s, there isn't a whole lot in the way of free agents available, so what we're going to do right now is go through our reserve list and the active roster. I'll call up a few guys. We'll take a look at every position and then pair them down to the guys we want to start the season with, and then advance the schedule up, or advance the game up to the exhibition schedule, and maybe play a couple of games as well as setting up our training for the upcoming year.
Yeah, the one thing I will say is if you missed our previous episode, you can find it archived on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/OOTP Developments.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do right here is just go down to our reserve list. These are the guys that are effectively in the minors or juniors right now. And I'm going to sort it by ability. And if you had a look at the active roster when I was on there, you could see we've still got maybe 40% of the roster. The active roster is still 2.5 stars, which really isn't an NHL standard. But we're going to say anybody on the reserve list has a shot at replacing those guys. So I'm just going to go through them all and bump all the 2.5 star guys up to Winnipeg, the main roster for the time being. And we will look through each one of the positions and see which one of these guys we want to keep on the main roster, who's being sent down, and who we're going to start the season with. McIver and Benoit Gosselin and anybody else down here, the 2-star guys. You can see there's a couple, Bob Janicek, Dale Yakuchuk have a little bit more potential, maybe good enough to play eventually, but right now they're only at 2, and we don't really want to be putting those guys into the NHL at the moment. That'll likely screw up their development since they're going to be overwhelmed. But this is what we have at the main roster right now. Starting off, goalie situation. Picked up Richard Brodeur via trade last year, and that's at least giving us a starter for the next couple of years. Brian Hayward, Jet in real life eventually, was one of our draft picks this year, and we've also got a couple of holdovers, Pierre Hamel and Marcus Matson. Hayward is probably the first guy that's going down, so since he's only 2 stars right now, 20 years old, and we're going to let him season in the minors for a little bit longer. So the question is, do we want Hamel as our backup, or do we want Matson? I'm looking at the pop-ups here, the stat lines for last year. Hamel played a little bit more often than Matson did. Didn't have great numbers. Bear in mind, this is the early 80s, so 4.82 goals against average. Well, that sucked even then, but it's not quite as disastrous as it would be right now. Matson actually was quite a bit stronger, or at least going by the stats. Save percentage is actually over 900, which is great for that era. And they're both, right now, you can see they're rated at 2.5 star potential and 2.5 star current ability. Neither one of them is going to get much better. So I think we might as well just go with Matson as a backup. He's a little bit younger. We may get lucky on development, and he can still exceed his potential a little bit. Not by a whole lot, but maybe it's enough to get him up to the level of being a minimally acceptable backup. And if not, maybe Hayward is ready a little later in the season to get some playing time, or we trade for a better backup if we're contending this year, which seems fairly unlikely. But I am going to not...
Not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's 16 out of 21 teams making the playoffs, so it's a little easier to get in back then it is now. So anyhow, Hamel is going down. Defenseman. This is where we did the big overhaul. Paul Coffey came in. Dave Babich also, our 2 first-round picks. I'm not really looking at the actual lines at this point, but I think we're eventually going to keep them maybe separate for the first start of the season at least. I could convert one of them into move them over to the right side. They're young and they'll grow into that role pretty quickly. But I think it's probably better to pair each of them with a veteran to start off with, and somebody that can play a little defense, especially in Coffey's case, because Coffey, we're not exactly the early 80s Oilers like he wound up on in real life. You can't hide Coffey's defensive deficiencies because, if he happens to give up, screw up defensively and give up 2 goals a game that way, you haven't got Gretzky to score 3 to make up for it. We're a little more offense starved than that. But let's say we're going to keep 7 defensemen up to start with. And I'm just going to, this isn't technically what they're for, but I'm going to use the scratch player option on here to mark the guys we definitely want to keep. And this is just putting them in the lineup as if we were about to play a game, but in this case I'm just using it for the sake of having a marker. So Coffey, obviously we want him, he's going to be a regular. Dave Babich likewise, even if they're not on the same line. Scott Campbell had a really good year for us, 20 points, 80 games, didn't miss any games due to injury. He was actually a good defenseman in real life, just got hurt a lot and never really panned out, but was fairly sought after when he was coming into the league. I remember I think it was St. Louis that wanted him pretty badly, but the Jets wound up protecting him when they merged with the NHL. They were only allowed 3 guys, and Campbell was one of them. So we definitely want to keep him around. So we've got our 3 left defensemen right now. I may move somebody over to the right side. But for now, Bill Nyrup, who we signed as a free agent early in last season. Real life, he had been retired for a couple of years at this point and then came back to play for Minnesota. So he's doing pretty well for us. Press him. He's going to be in the NHL. I wouldn't count on it. Craig Norwich, who actually had 40 points for us last year, was really good offensively. The problem is Norwich is terrible defensively. I think he's actually declined a little bit in this game already. His ability and potential are only 2.5 stars. And the thing is, if we've got Norwich, who's awful defensively, Paul Coffey, who you can see right there the options, Anders Elderbrink, who we just drafted, Randy Gregg, who played half the season for us but is still rated only 2.5 stars, Claude Julien, who we just drafted, and may or may not eventually make it into the NHL. I wouldn't count on it. Craig Norwich, who actually had 40 points for us last year, was really good offensively. The problem is Norwich is terrible defensively. I think he's actually declined a little bit in this game already. His ability and potential are only 2.5 stars. And the thing is, if we've got Norwich, who's awful defensively, Paul Coffey, who you can see right there, the defensive score on the pop-up is only 10. Which is actually even worse than Norwich, but Coffey's got more upside. Do I really want to have 2 guys who are absolutely terrible defensively playing big minutes on my defense? So I'm not sure I want to use Norwich in that spot. May actually become trade bait at some point just because he's not really compatible with having Coffey in there. But one of the things I do see, Tim Waters, who hadn't played, I don't think he actually broke into the NHL until 81, 82. But in our case, was in the minor leagues last year, and he's already progressed to 3 stars, so his development is a little bit ahead of schedule. I'm just going to take a quick look at him here. And what I'm interested in is his right defense rating, which is 16, which is not fantastic. Generally, if you're going to be playing a guy at one of his non-normal positions, You want at least 15, but ideally 18 or 19. 16 is not great, but he'll grow into that reasonably quickly. And the nice thing is, we're in the off season. We're going to get 8 exhibition games before we even play before we get into the regular season. And during those exhibition games, that will help move along Waters' progression. Anybody that's learning a new position will help move along their progression pretty quickly. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, looking at right defense, I think kind of, other than Waters, the guys we should be looking at is Randy Gregg, Claude Julien, who was a recent draft pick for us, Barry Melrose, and Bill Dyrop.
Yeah. Just going to send down a few of the guys who had absolutely no hope. Don McIver's 2.5-star potential, which isn't terrible, but he's definitely not the top guy. He can go down. Mark Plantry, 3 stars. I'm going Ross Corey. Okay, he played half the year for us, but he's fallen down the depth charts. And speaking of depth chart, I can also double check it against the depth chart now that we've got those. And you can see the ranking of the current defensemen. They've got basically the 6. Yeah, the 6 I just identified, so we're doing okay there. Norwich is on there. Gregg is on there. And at the bottom we got Elderbrink and Julien. So I think we're going to send Julien down. You never know. Maybe he develops a little faster and he gets there, but I think in real life he played about a dozen games, 15, 16 games for the Nordiques one year. And that was the end of his NHL career until he made it back as a coach. And Elderbrink, who has some good long-term potential, but he's not ready yet. He can go down as well. Plantry, likewise, young guy, only 20. No reason to rush him. And what do we got down? We got... Okay, I'm going to use the dress icon on Waters, and we'll start him... I want to get him some playing time so he can get that right defense positioning raised up towards 20. And once he'll gradually add a point as we're playing and training him. And you'll see that right defense rating rising from 16, going up 17, 18, 19. When it hits 20, you can only have one 20 rated position at a time. So as soon as it hits 20, you'll see left defense decline to 19, and his position indicator right here I'm pointing at it will switch to RD/lefty.
Okay.
But there we got 6 defensemen, and we were going to cut this down to 7. We got 9 total. So Lars Erik Schuberg, he was a big star in the WHA, was playing not too badly for us last year, but had major injury problems his last WHA season, and if I'm remembering right, he had something pretty ugly. Nope, I guess not. I'm remembering wrong. That might have been the game that I had to restart. So he wasn't injured last year. He just wasn't a regular, and I just don't see a place for him anymore. Good veteran, but we're trying to move forward, so there's not really much room for a 36-year-old. So he can go down to the minors, and if we get injuries or something, back up. But for now, and I think I am going to leave it at 8 defensemen just for the time being. I might come back to that and when we're done with the forwards and trim it down a little bit more, but we'll leave it as it is for the moment. Okay, forwards. Obvious one to go down, Raimo Suominen, only 1.5 stars. He's got some potential, but he is nowhere near being ready to play in the NHL right now. That's going to the reserve list. Larry Hopkins, good character guy, but 2 stars. Sorry, buddy, you're not staying up there. And I'm just going to take the dressed icons off a few of these guys so we can do the same thing with the forwards that we did with the defensemen.
For sure.
And one other thing, now that I'm looking at it, that we're going to have to do before the start, or we should do before the start of the season, is figure out one more assistant captain. We got Ron Wilson, who has one of the alternates. Morris Lukowicz can stay as the captain, but we need to fill one more slot there. Okay, so I've got all of these guys scratched. Now let's go through this one by one and fill out the roster. Maddie Hagman, great free agent pickup for us last year, so I think he's going to definitely stay as the number one center, and I think it's just him and Lukowicz are the only guys above 3 stars at the moment on the team. So he's absolutely staying where he is. Hagman dresses, Lukowicz also for sure dresses, and Dave Christian played the whole season for us. Real life, he was in the Miracle on Ice team at the start of the year.
Yeah.
And we will leave him up as well. He's 3 stars, potential for 3.5, and I think he may actually get a little bit better than that. Willie Linstrom, 3 stars. He can stay up. But I think I'm just gonna take by default anybody that's 3 stars. Peter Marsh. How did Marsh do? Yeah, Marsh had a decent enough season for us. The plus minus is pretty ugly, but that's par for the course on second to last place team.
Yeah. I think the 2 biggest possible high upside, but still need a little bit of work, guys we'll need to make decisions on, is Thomas Steen and Hakan Lube, who was a recent draft pick.
Yeah, Lube, 4-star potential, 2.5 stars. He's got definitely more potential than anybody else we've got on the right side, but he's not quite there yet. Just for the time being, I'm going to mark Jimmy Mann as our 4th right winger because it's the early 80s and we need a goon.
And he was our number 1 draft pick.
Yeah, last year, which point out that we didn't do that. John Ferguson did that. We'll blame that on him. Left side, Lukowicz is there. Jorgen Pettersson, who we signed as a free agent. That should be another, may give us a really solid second line left wing. So he's going on there. Doug Smale, Jet in real life, I don't think we drafted him. I think we signed him as a free agent too, if I'm remembering right. Yeah, we did a couple of days ago.
All right.
And he's up to 3 stars already, which is surprising because I don't think he was in the NHL till the latter half of 81-82. But I definitely don't see any other 3-star guys, so Smale stays up. Probably kill some penalties for us this year.
Yeah.
And I think, unless I'm missing anybody, that is all the 3-star guys, plus Jimmy Mann, who's only 2.5, but gotta have a fighter in there. And nobody else lower than 2.5. I'm going to send down some of the guys that are only 2.5 potential. Gord McTavish back down to the reserve list, since we'll want guys who can, if there's anybody who's going to improve at least a little, might as well keep him around. Lawrence Stammer, I feel kind of bad about sending this guy down. He played 1 game for us last year and scored twice in it, and then we did nothing else with him the rest of the year.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be some fairly tough decisions to come for some guys, I think. For instance, Bill Clemente.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to dress him, or at least put him on the list of guys who are going to stay with us at least for the start of the season. But that decline really scares me. We traded for him. He had a great year, career year for himself.
53 points.
And now he's, we've been getting the warnings from the ratings development emails saying he's been dropping ratings and he's down to 2.5 stars. But I mean, still, do we have a better alternative as a checking forward for the 4th line at least? I don't really see one. So he'll stay.
Who's our centers going to be right now then? Just taking a quick look. We have
Hagman, definitely the 1st line center. Ron Wilson, probably the second, unless we move Christian over to the center and activated Lube as one of the wingers, in which case Lindstrom gets bumped up to the 1st line, which he can do reasonably well. And Peter Marsh probably moves up a little bit too.
What about Flockhart?
Yeah, Ron Flockhart, one of the draft picks last year.
Or Thomas Steen, with 2.5 guys, but higher potential.
Yep, and there's also Norm Alban, he's only 2.5 stars. So Alban is going down to the reserve list. Don't want him. Oops. So Flockhart and Steen. Just looking at the ratings on the pop-up, the general ratings, offense, Flockhart is 13 in everything except defense, and there's 12 there. So I think Flockhart is actually a little farther along than Thomastina is at this point. Defensively, he's not that much. No, not worse at all. I think we may want to take a chance. I mean, Steen didn't do anything for us at all when we called him up last year, did he?
No, but he came in fairly late, and we were not doing very good by that point.
Yeah, true. We were kind of tanking a little bit, possibly, maybe.
Yeah, and I don't think he was playing too many minutes if we looked at that.
Okay, I'm going to hold off on that decision for a second and just go over to the left wings. Gosselin go down.
Average time was 6:01. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I shouldn't be judging him too harshly based on that. Still, Flockhart's ratings are slightly better. 2.5. John Markell can go down. I think Hoyda is going down as well. Just going to keep Hoyda down, send Hoyda down ahead of Stamler. But I think Stamler's probably going to wind up going to. Brad Palmer's only 18. Send him down. And I need to send 2 more guys to the reserve list. And so what have we got? Stamler is kind of surplus. Flockhart, Steen, Mark Heaslip, and Hackenloob. Heaslip 2.5 star potential. Down he goes. We'd also send a defenseman down. I think Flockhart, just on the strength of the way his ratings look right now, I'm going to theoretically start with him in the starting lineup.
Like it.
And we need 1 more forward to dress. I don't know if I want to put... he's 2.5 stars. It's kind of a waste to... I think what I'm going to do is switch Peter Marsh over to left wing. Dress Lube. Leave Christian where he is. And... Oops. Forgot this is 1980, so we can only dress 19 players, not 20.
Yeah.
So we won't get that until beginning of next season. But anyhow, I've got to send 1 more guy down. Stamler, Norwich, Greg, Lube. I'm going to send Lube down just because I want him to get that fairly and slightly safer development rate because he's a better prospect. I don't want him to just be sitting on our bench doing nothing. Sure.
That makes sense.
And don't have to worry about the salary cap. So if this was a cap environment, I would probably send down one of the defensemen too and get down to either 22 or 21 players on the main roster. But in this case, we're just take a look at our payroll. Yeah, we are well beyond, well under what we can afford to pay. So no worries about that. Okay, I think that is our roster to start the next year, unless we get offered a trade or something. And I'm going to advance it up until, when does our preseason start? Preseason starts September the 25th. I'm going to move this up to the beginning of September, or I'm actually going to move it up to the end of August, and then set up my training just so I can get the new training setup kicking in at on September 1st. So ideally, this, unless we get interrupted by something, this should go by in pretty much a blink of an eye. But naturally, we will get interrupted as soon as I do this. Yep, here we go. I'll just start development. Import a couple of interesting down. Rich Preston to the Flames and Englands, and yeah, some minor deals. Nothing, not a big deal. Just looking through our development report here. Not too bad. The only one really declining here is Don McIver. Lube's picked up a point here and there. So good news on the development front pretty much all the way through. Just going to take a look at our star ratings. Does anybody changed in a particularly significant way? Not that I can see of so far. Nope, not on the reserve list either. So back to simming forward to August the 30 days or 31 in August?
There is
31.
April,
yeah.
June, and November. So
Yeah, you have to do the rhyme too, eh?
Oh, every time.
Yep.
Every time.
Okay, and you see, just blink of an eye, we're all the way through, and there were no new alerts. Oh, here, whoa, check
on the chat. Ratcast on the chat. Also, our friend Dave from Gamehounds says, "Do you guys develop when you send them down in historic mode?"
Yep. Hey, Dave. Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole reserve list thing is simulating the minors and or junior, any league that a player wouldn't be. Where the players who weren't on an NHL roster would wind up going to, so they just get a sort of default development rate that would be typical of a guy that would be be on the team's top minor league team. And it's a little bit simpler. It won't take into account whether or not since it's abstracted, whether or not what level of play is relative to the guy's skill level, which could potentially, like if you send a guy down that's way too good for the AHL in the modern game, that's going to hurt his development speed. In this case, everybody gets the same generic type of development, so it's a safe alternative, really. So which is why I was sending Lube down instead of keeping him up, because if I leave him in the NHL before he's a little bit too ready, and particularly if he's not getting any playing time at all, I'm more likely to screw up his development by doing that than by sending him down. And looks like we got a pretty big deal here. Minnesota, who was the upset cup winner this year, traded their number one center to the Blackhawks for Tony Esposito, who has had a decent season but is getting right near the end of his career. So kind of a surprise there.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking... Well, they did get Neil Broughton this year, so he'll probably have a breakout year next year, but I'm not looking for Minnesota to repeat the Stanley Cup after that happened. But back to us. Clicking on the home icon gets us back to the Jets screen. And what I want to do here is go through... Well, first I want to go into my manager options and turn the assistant off on the training screen. Now I had that set to assistant just so we could get through last season without too much interruption. And I think I'm going to leave scouting on manual, even though I screwed it up last year, and we'll be a little more interactive this year, I think, with getting into the nuts and bolts of how certain things work. Okay, there is the training screen. I'd still have access to this if I had the assistant turned on, but it would go ahead and make changes after I left it. In this case, the changes I'm making right now will stick.
Okay.
So goalies, I don't think there's a whole lot. I could give Mattson a little extra attention and try to develop him, but I'd rather squeeze whatever I can out of Brodeur. And
well, Brodeurs 3-3, right? So
yeah, okay. Let's split it. We'll work on Brodeur's mental game, but if you saw some of the mental half of the goalie ratings aren't capped in the same way that the goalie ratings are. The cap is a little bit firmer on the goalie rating side. So actually, I noticed in the last development report, Brodeur improved his mental toughness a little bit. So I'm going to stick with the mental training on him, and I'm going to put the priority on goalie skills training on Mattson to see if he can improve improve it all that way. And the middle columns, physical, offensive, defensive, don't apply to goalies, so I'm not going to worry about that now. I am going to blank out all the other training so we can start with a completely blank slate here. Oops. If I don't misclick and go onto the screen here.
I'm just peering around on other rosters as you're going through and seeing what if say we wanted a goalie upgrade, and Montreal had 4 goalies who are 3 stars at ability and potential or above, so including one guy on the trade block.
Yeah, maybe something to look at if we're having any trouble, midway through the season. But I mean, come on, you're asking a guy who's wearing a Canucks jersey to trade Richard Brodeur. Come on.
I'm not saying
Or well, at
just
least
try and
replace
pick
Richard
somebody else.
Brodeur.
Well, we can have somebody else as a backup. Ratcast again from the chat says, I'm starting in the 78-79 WHA season. Is that league going to end at the end of the season?
Yes, it is, and you'll be unemployed. So depending on which team you're taking, you can always go way back, turn on commissioner mode, and manually take over whichever one of the, if it's one of the 4 WHA teams that merge into the NHL at the end of that season, and take over the new NHL team. But there's no actual continuity between the WHA teams and the NHL. The league just ends, and 4 expansion teams appear in the NHL. I'd like to do it. It would be great if we could automatically do all of that for you, but it's a little clumsy at this point, and that's the only way we can work around the league dying and teams moving over to a different one. So for the moment, you're stuck with doing it that way. But getting back to this, just to illustrate, I think I've gone through this once before, but to illustrate how this works, when you click on the assign player button on the training screen, you can see it starts out it'll start out at 20, and the more players I click on, the thinner it gets spread. Those bonus points are what affect the players have a chance to develop normally, and then this training system gives them a chance at developing a little extra on top of that, depending on the strength of the coaching staff, which if I was looking at the personnel screen, you would see all the staff rated in different categories. And in addition to the strength of the staff, the amount of specific attention you're giving to different players. So if I want to, I could theoretically click every player on here, and you see the number gets smaller and smaller. 20 is the maximum bonus you can get in a given category for a player, and that's going to give you a very good chance of getting some improvement in that ratings category in the upcoming month. And all the way down to, misclicked again, nice going. And if I kept going, it would eventually get down to 1, which would be a very remote chance. If you noticed when I originally came into this screen, what the AI had done was set up about 7 or 8 guys in each category. And that's maybe a little bit spread a little bit thinner than I'd like. So what I'm going to do is pick out, let's start with half a dozen each, and then you can see I'm going to leave them on that for at least the first 2-3 months of the season. And as the training reports are coming in, you can get an idea of how much of an effect this is having. And let's start off with the defensive training. For God's sake, we need to give Coffee some help there. He's probably the worst defensive player on the team right now. Craig Norwich, I mentioned before, terrible defensively. Let's see if we can improve him any, although I'm not wildly optimistic. I'm going to give Doug Smale a priority too here. He's young, just come onto the team, and I think he's got some potential as a 3rd, 4th line guy. Let's see, Dave Christian, young developing player, and help him move along a little bit. Ron Wilson, my 2nd line center right now, but he's probably got more of a future as a checking line guy once we get a little bit more scoring depth. And you can see I'm dropped down to 10 already. I don't think I'm going to add more than one guy. I think just Dave Babbage, because he's, seeing the bonuses drop down to 8. Just because he's a fairly high draft pick. Offensively, we definitely want Thomas Steen to keep developing. Flockhart as well. I'm going to give Christian a little bit of help there. Coffee. And let's see who could use a little bit more offensive help. Jorgen Pedersen we just signed. I will go with Lukowicz there and Pedersen.
Okay.
Physical training. Coffee should be doing fine there. He's probably going to be way ahead of everybody to begin with. See if Randy Gregg can get a little bit of improvement there. Tim Waters is coming along nicely.
Dave Christian might need a little bit of that.
Yeah, we felt that we're giving him help in other categories too. Willie Linstrom. No, I think I'll save that. Use a mental category on him instead. How many is that for? Go with Pedersen again and Maddie Hagman. You can see although I've named 6 guys, my coaching ratings for physical are a little bit higher in that category, so my bonus stays at 10 instead of dropping down to 8 like it did for offensive and defensive. Mental training, who did I say I was going to give that to? No, directly. No, the goalies are actually separate. That's
Okay.
That won't affect. You can see I can click on a guy's here and it won't change the
Would
goalie score
Thomas
at all.
be a bad guy to give it to?
Yeah, good point. Thomas Dean, I think Wilson will get a little help there as well. I am really bad with the clicking tonight. And Jimmy Mann. Help Waters develop. I think Nyrup should get a little bit of help in at least one category. That's 5. One more guy. And Coffey's our blue chip prospect, so let's go with him, and it drops down to 9 in this case. And goalie training, obviously the rest of the guys aren't goalies, so I'm not touching them. And that is where I will leave the training to at least until probably 2-3 months into the season. So I'm going to advance this to the end of the month, and I think we'll get a training notification. Yep, development report.
Interesting trades.
And oh boy. Okay, you see we got a few guys going downhill pretty badly. Norwich is slipping. Matson, we did not have a good August. Bud Stefanski basically falling apart. You know, a lot of individual improvements, but not quite as good as a month before. Our schedule coming up, we're on September 1st, and we got our first game September the 25th. Take a quick look at the free agent center to see if anybody's been cut loose that's interesting, although I doubt it. No, basically the same guys that were there that we passed up on at the start of the season. So let's zoom forward to the next game. And it should only take a second or so once it gets done the save. And there we are.
Okay, I've actually pulled off a decent trade going sideways here. Quebec, in this particular game, somehow got Pele Lindbergh in net, who's currently on the reserve list. And I got him for Bob Janisic and a second-round pick, with them throwing in another guy, which wouldn't be a terrible upgrade for us.
Yep, if slightly morbid given what actually happened to Lindbergh, but...
Yes.
I think we'll... Oh, actually, hang on a second. I just looked in our game, and Richard Berder has developed a little extra. He's up to 3.5 stars now.
Oh, even better.
So...
But this would be a good way to give us a 1-2 boost.
Yeah. And yeah, actually, I'm going to take a little look through my roster right here. Now that that's happened, I can see Lawrence Stamler has declined to 2 stars. So I am sending him down to the reserve list, and we will bring up a different forward. Has anybody made it up to 3? Nobody's made it up to 3. Got a bunch of 2.5s. Again, I'm not crazy about the idea of bringing up Lube just because he's not going to be playing that much for us to begin with. Palmer, Suminen, boy, that's... I think I'm going to bring up John Markell just for lack of a better alternative, and we'll keep an eye out on the waiver wire or whatever else comes available as a possible replacement for him.
For sure.
And I'm going to see what the AI wants to do with my lines as I've given it to him right now. Oh yeah, that's... Well... So it wants Lukowicz, Dave Christian, Maddie Hagman as our first line, which is pretty much what it was last year, at least when Bobby Hall wasn't hurt.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it looks like it's gone with a little bit more of a checking line on the second line. Not sure if I'm crazy about that. Wants Jürgen Pettersson behind Doug Smale. Oh, Lindstrom's on the second, and Bill Clemente still is a number 2 center. I do not think that is going to end well for us if we do that. And Coffey's only getting third line minutes, but also on top power play units. Well, I'm going to defer to the AI's judgment to begin with on this. One other thing, I got the notification to set my captains up, which I'd forgotten about. We're going to leave Lukowicz as the captain, Ron Wilson as one of the alternates. Just going to flip over to the ratings screen and the leadership ratings. You don't want to go strictly by the leadership rating when you're setting the captain, but it will give you an idea of who should be under consideration. So the best guys who aren't captains right now: Christian, who's a little young; Flockhart is way too young; Hagman, not sure about that. They're the 15s, and you get on to 14. And I think I kind of like Scott Campbell here as the other alternate captain. Only 23, but pretty solid defenseman. I know Clemente's going downhill, so I don't want to keep him around. Give him the alternate captain role. Willie Linstrom would be another possibility. Now there's Barry Melrose, but I think Campbell is more likely to stay around than Melrose is. I think I'm going to make Campbell the second assistant. And okay, that's that. And what else is going on in our inbox here? Just a few trades. Minor leaguer Hartford and LA. Another minor leaguer Colorado and the Hawks. Just incidental little deals. Oh, and Pittsburgh traded Dale Tallon to Washington. I think Tallon's career was pretty much over at this point, even though he's only 29. Did he even play in the NHL? He did play a little bit for him last year. I think that's actually much better than he did in real life, but I don't think the Caps are going to get much out of him.
Well, everybody's got to find their own path at some point. Some guys are much better managers than they ever are players.
Yeah, speaking of which, sounds like Bruce Boudreau is going to wind up in Calgary.
You think so?
That's what I was hearing. It was, at least, I don't really understand why they cut Hartley loose. I'm not terribly upset to see that happen, being a Canucks fan.
Well, I heard they were interviewing Randy Carlyle, and I kind of chuckled and said, well, maybe that would be the perfect fit.
Yeah, well, it's Brian Burke. What do you expect?
I mean, I like Randy Carlyle, but he's a coach who'll wear on a team fairly quick. And I mean, you had Bob Hartley, who's kind of the same type of guy, so I'm not really sure.
Yeah, Sutter before him, so you'd think maybe the Flames' live roster's used to it by now.
Sutter. Wasn't it Mike Keenan in there, too?
Yeah, at one point. That's revolving chair in Calgary there. Okay, I think we got our first exhibition game tonight, so I can't think of anything else we urgently need to do right now. So let's play this game. I'm going to leave it with the AI's tactics. Let me make sure I've actually got that setting on. Yeah, the AI is handling tactics for me at the moment. Let's see how it does with this new look lineup of ours. Actually, let's watch this one play. It's only going to be an exhibition game. I know it's going to tell us that much, but...
See if Richard Brodeur is as good as he is playing, as his stats increases.
It looks like the AI is using Randy Gregg as on one of the starting 6 defensemen. We had Waters there. Okay, well. And I'm going to take it down to action condensed, and let's move this along.
Randy Gregg. All right.
Dr. Randy Gregg. We're kind of rebuilding, well, not quite rebuilding, but we've got him, we've got Coffey, we've got another ex-Oiler too, don't we, somewhere? Hagman, there we go. So we've got about the weaker end of the early 80s Oilers. I'm not sure what the Oilers are actually replacing those spots with, but they were pretty good, and we score early.
Yeah, Ratcast in the chat says, how do you fire a coach like Boudreau? They make the playoffs every year. It's great to make the playoffs, but in the end, people just want to win Stanley Cups. And unfortunately for Bruce Boudreau, he has lost too many games with not winning a Stanley Cup. Especially those game sevens have really been hurting him. Now, granted, it's not always his fault when you don't have your top guys scoring. But...
And just trying to see what the score is in now. It looks like Capitals have tied it up. So remains to be seen if the Capitals can get anywhere with coach other than Boudreau.
Yeah.
They haven't done it yet, so it may be more an Ovechkin thing than it is a Bruce Boudreau thing.
Well, the one thing I will say, Barry Trotz will get them to play defense, and he convinced Alex Ovechkin to play defense, which is something Bruce Boudreau never really did. Yeah. We'll see how everything turns out.
Yep, I mean, they were our official when we did the simulation after the last round. Capitals won, I think, about 35% of the time. It was usually a Capitals Blues final, so I think that's still our official pick to win the Cup this year. But I don't know if do you really
changes.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I want to bet on Ovechkin against Crosby. So historically, that has not gone well for him.
No.
And it looks like we're off to a pretty good preseason start so far. 11-5, outshooting Washington. Washington at this stage is a pretty god-awful team. It looks like the AI has done a much worse job than the actual Capitals management have done. They were starting to turn it around in the early 80s. They picked up Dennis Maruk from after the Minnesota-Cleveland merger and got Ryan Walter in the draft, Bobby Carpenter in 81, and we're getting better, but we're still pretty rough at this point. But the names I'm seeing on the, good God, Reg Thomas, Guy Chiron, a lot of guys who are past their prime, a few spare parts. I think we can finish ahead of these guys, actually, and the end of the first, and they've tied it up.
Ratcast says, I remember Boudreau, Portland, Maine.
Yep, looked like he was going to be... he was in the AHL forever as a player and then wound up coaching there. And like you said, one of those guys that never goes anywhere as a player and then turns out to be a pretty decent management guy.
Well, that's the way how lots of those particular players kind of turn out. So.
Okay, this isn't going so well. We're down 2-1 now.
Well, that's going to happen. How's our shots going?
16 each. No, they're out, 17-70 now. And just looking at the shot location on the charts, I don't see any obvious, and we're down 3-1. Fantastic.
Portland is moving to Springfield next season. Ratcast in the chat.
Oh, did that just happen? I knew Springfield was losing their team. I didn't hear they had a replacement.
So that's what league?
AHL, yeah.
Portland. Who's Portland and the Miners then? I mean, all I can think of is the WHL, which is not obviously correct.
Winter Hawks. No, it's Portland, Maine versus Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said I'm drawing.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I always hate seeing places lose teams, but especially for some reasons. But
yeah, you're kind of familiar with that in Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, yeah. It's happened a couple times. Now we have two teams, which is really odd.
How'd the Moose do for attendance this year? I hadn't looked yet.
They were better than they expected. Not as high as they were previously, but I think they had something.
Yeah, they're never going to get the AHL, IHL numbers, but
I think it was something like 5,600 or they were around. Something
that's
around
respectable,
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Everyone was pretty happy. The Moose were pretty happy. Well, the Jets, not the Moose. They
Yeah, I mean, some
keep
places
saying
it's worked with having the AHL team in the same city, but other places, Edmonton lasted a year. That didn't pan out well at all.
the Pirates are leaving. Radcast says.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm also kind of interested to see if Ottawa moves their AHL team. There's rumors they might move them to Belleville. But Belleville's arena situation is still a mess, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. Ratcast says, I love going to the... Not having an ECHL team go there, Ratcast? I thought I had heard that might be happening.
Yeah, that would seem to be the logical thing.
Not saying it will, but...
And 3-2, we're getting a little bit closer here, but not the greatest start to the preseason. Oh, wait, that looks like Tim Waters is playing. So who the heck is the AI sitting out if Waters is in? Coffey's in. Is Babbage not playing?
Maybe not. Ratcast, I had season tickets to the Worcester. That's for 10 years.
Worcester,
sorry.
Yeah.
Worcester had has ECHL.
And hey, we tied it up.
All right. Well, Babbage is in there.
And I actually think Bill Clemente's got a couple of points, so maybe he's turning around that premature decline, and we're winning.
All right.
Okay, so nice third period comeback there, assuming we hang on to this. 30 seconds left. It's looking like we will, and I think we're shooting on an empty net. Nope, off of Ryan Walter's skate. And the Caps get a penalty with 30 seconds left, and that is the end of it.
All right.
Oh, wait, no, that was Dave Christian. I saw Dave Christian, and I was thinking Christian played for the Caps at the end of his career, and figured, no, that's penalty on them, but that was on us.
Oh, so we're on penalty kill. Ooh.
Yep, no, it's over. We won 4-3.
All right, good. First win of the season that doesn't count.
Yep. Take a look back at the box score for it. So who was playing? Babbage and Campbell, Coffey, Waters, Greg, Melrose. Bill Nyrup wound up sitting out. That's kind of a surprising decision by the AI. Oh, I see why, because Greg has developed up to 3 stars, and so has Waters, and Nyrup, I guess, is just a little bit behind.
All right. Stats look pretty good overall for the game.
Yeah, nothing. We out-hit them nearly 2-1. Face-offs were pretty even. Yeah, nice game. Oh, yeah, and Paul Coffey, first NHL game, even if it's only an exhibition game, winds up with a game rating of 100.
Perfect.
That's what we want to see. That's why you use the number 2 overall on him. And yeah, Washington. The only thing that doesn't encourage me a lot is this Washington team is just terrible. That's.
Should we do a quick sim? The next Chicago game?
Yeah, how far ahead is that? That's
Tomorrow.
Today.
Yeah.
So I'll just autoplay up to then. And I'm just going to hit finish today, and we'll sim through that. And what happened? We lost 6-2, not surprisingly.
Ooh.
And Bobby Smith, who they just picked up, scores for him. How'd we do? Ouch. Shots were actually pretty even. Oh, 25 penalty minutes. That's what killed us.
Of course.
And they were 1. Well, they were only 1 for 7 on the power play though, so that didn't do it to us that badly. A lot of defensive scores. Greg's in the 30, had a 38 game rating. Melrose is a 43. Pedersen 46. And it looks like the AI dressed Steen. And only gave him 6 minutes, so yeah, he's going to have trouble getting playing time. And oh, wow, Chicago's actually got John Casey in goal. I don't think Casey actually made it to the NHL until like 5 or 6 years after this. He kicked it around for the minors for a long time, but they traded Tony Esposito away in the game. And Chicago's actually got a pretty good lineup. They were still contenders at this point in real life. You add Bobby Smith to it, and they get decent goaltending. That's maybe a cup contender there.
No, that's good.
Okay, and I'm just going to sim for... I've only got to go one more day, so I'm just going to hit finish a day then, so we get up to the 28th, which will be our next game against the Islanders, who were upset in the final by the North Stars. Or no, actually it was the Canadiens. They were upset in the semifinal by the North Stars, and the Stars upset the Canadiens for the Cup. But I will leave it at there this week since we're just getting past the hour. Anything urgent? Let me take a quick look at the Free Agents Center to see if anybody interesting has been cut. But it's even worse than it was before, it looks like.
It tends to happen.
Yeah, a couple of veteran European guys are the only 3 stars left. Nobody I really want. And just glancing down at the signings during the off season, I can see that a lot of the guys that we were seeing on here earlier in the summer got picked off. Gary Carr. Yeah, so I think the other teams have pretty much picked over the better part of the free agent crop, so there's not going to be much for us there.
Yeah, it doesn't look like too much.
Yeah, not seeing anything particularly obvious. Waivers list. We've got no injuries at least. Made it through the whole off-season, the first couple of exhibition games without anybody getting hurt, so that's not too bad. And I think we will leave it at this point. I just want to see what that... it's just a major injury to one of the guys in the wings. No, other than that, I think we will leave it here. And then we will... Next week, we'll get through the rest of the exhibition schedule. Probably zoom through that pretty quickly and get off to the start of the 80-81 season. And see if we're a little better than... what was it? The 50-odd... Take a quick look at it here. 48 points in our first NHL season, so we've got to be able to do a little bit better than that. You can see how bad we were.
We can't do much worse.
Yeah, our best goalie had 9 wins.
And again, can't do much worse than that. Yeah. So.
Okay, so I am going to save the game as we stand here.
And as you're doing that, then, thank you for tuning in. We are live every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/OOTP Developments. You will find this video archived on our YouTube, which is youtube.com/OOTP Developments. You can find us on Twitter, which is @FranchiseHockey. You can find us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/FranchiseHockeyManager. If you want to come to our forums and talk more about Franchise Hockey Manager 2, what you'd like to see in Franchise Hockey Manager 3, and more info will be coming there, which is from our website, which is ootpdevelopments.com/forums.
And if you're watching us and don't have the game on for some reason at this point, you may want to turn it on because it looks like Washington and Pittsburgh are going into overtime.
Yes. Although if you're watching this on YouTube, it's long been over and you'll already know the score or possibly who won the Stanley Cup, depending on the time of year you're watching this. Anything else, Jeff?
No, not offhand. We're well into development of FHM3 right now. Ran into a little bit of a problem. We noticed with FHM2 there's an issue with some of the playoff seedings aren't showing up correctly in the game as it stands right now. So I think what we may wind up doing is a quick hot fix for that, which ideally will be out hopefully next week, assuming it doesn't lead to any further problems. So we may throw you a quick patch for that one, although it's not really going to cause any critical problems. It'll just, you'll get the wrong matchup in the playoffs in the second round in the modern game some of the time, and the occasional historical league. It's nothing really that critical, but we'd rather not leave it that way, so we might just throw you a quick patch, but it's no reason not to start a new game or continue on with one you've already got now.
Yeah, and speaking of future games, our stream next week will be us heading back towards the future and playing as the 2016-2017 Winnipeg Jets, where we have turned our season from previously last place into first place. We're currently through 71 games, have 98 points, are leading the Western Conference, and hopefully we'll be looking pretty good in the playoffs.
Yep, kind of helped that we got a really good draft pick and after the 2016 season. Not that would ever happen to the real Jets, right?
Much like the real Jets. Gotta love it. And I felt the...
Yeah, gotta love it unless you're a Canucks fan.
But you know what? It was almost worthwhile to see Brian Burke's face when he saw that they were dropping.
Yeah.
He looked like he was going to punch someone, which, was pretty funny.
I'd still rather have us having second or third, even if Burke was picking right after that.
Well,
and then again, when doesn't Burke look like he's going to punch somebody? That's pretty much his default resting expression.
Well, when the Jets won 4 games in a row at the end of the season, everyone was all worried, so I'm glad it worked out for us.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for tuning in then.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and we will see you next week with the return back to the modern version of FHM2. And then we'll be back the week after that with these Jets, and we'll see if we can take a run at the playoffs that next year, or in 80-81, since they're a lot easier to make in this era.